We are live. Hey guys, thanks for joining us on the social work race. And if you're listening to this on a podcast, you cannot see this lovely smiling face next to me. I'm so glad to have her with us. I say that this is going to be an interesting show because I'm going to be, I don't know, assessed. I don't know what we want to call it, right? But this is the Social Work Race podcast. You know, this is really a platform for frontline workers and social workers to share their experience, especially for, it was originally created for students to come and learn because I struggle to learn with certain resources with my learning style. There's not a lot of information out there that is really kind of more down to earth for frontline workers to vent, share their narrative, learn, access to resources, all of that. This is aiming to be the place. And I'm joined with someone who I met via LinkedIn. And I have no idea what we're going to label this show, but it's to do with coaching. So I just want to introduce you to Rash, who has joined me. Yeah, we've met him through LinkedIn. Obviously, I'm posting and probably tweaks your interest. And I called out. I think I called out to you, I didn't know, or something like that. And it's a pleasure to have you on the show. And she's really got some really positive energy. So if you really want to catch the rest of this show in video form, just go to the YouTube channel, The Social Work Race, and you'll be able to see that beautiful smile. And her, I don't know, is it a filter? She's got this amazing look, better than mine. And I've put a lot of work into mine as well. It's not fair. And she said, all I've got is this simple video camera. I'm like, it's not fair. So yeah, let me hand you over to my friend, and she will introduce herself, and then we'll take it from there. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, introduce yourself.
Thanks. So I'm Rash Powell, and I've been working in sort of frontline third sector work for about 15 years. Started off as a frontline worker in homelessness. I've worked in a bit in addiction, a bit in community work, and I've managed people as well. And as part of that process, I learned some coaching skills. I found it really interesting, really rewarding. And so I decided to try and make it as a coach. So that's my primary job. I do have another job while this one is growing as a business. But I guess my real passion is for helping people who are in social work and who are in frontline roles. Having worked there myself, having supported people in those kinds of roles, it's amazing, like how many skills you have, how much knowledge you have, how much experience you have. You know so much stuff. And when it comes to our own lives, we can get really stuck. And it can be more difficult because we know what we need to do. But we just can't do it. For whatever reason, we get stuck. And so that's why I love being a coach. And that's why I specifically love being a coach for people in social work and frontline roles. Because when you give people that space, when you ask particular questions, they have the answers. And it's like, you will have seen it when you work with your clients, the light bulb goes on, the motivation kicks in. And so that's why I do what I do. And coaching is very much a process that is led by you. And that is how I work. It's, coaches, there are a lot of different ways that different coaches work. But I'm very, very much led by the individual, and I'll use different tools and different approaches as works for whatever's happening in that moment.
Wow. I'm looking forward to this because therapy is not something I advocate for. I've had it a few times, and I've not in my life, in all these years, around 40 odd years I've been alive, I find any kind of therapeutic support very enlightening, but it's not a part of my culture. So I'm going to find this interesting. I'm guessing, you feel free to. You're going to pull me apart. I'm a social worker, and I work with children and families. And break me down, do what you got to do. But before we go into that, I just want to know a little bit more about it. I'm going to ask you maybe a couple of random questions. You've
Mhm.
worked with homeless people. One insightful, reflective thing that you've learned with working with that client group.
What can I say?
I know you weren't ready for this question, but that's okay.
No, but I mean, I think so many things. Like, I don't. That's why I'm like taking my time with this question, because I think one of the things that really pops into my mind straight away is that it takes time and it's about building relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, the systems that you work in when you're working in homelessness can be very challenging towards that process. Funding is very concentrated on particular approaches or particular timescales, particular outcomes. So it can be a really challenging job because people need that time, they need that input, they need to build trust. And you also, I think the other big reflection is you also need to be able to draw your own boundaries internally in terms of the fact that it can take a long time, and the intervention you have with someone might not be the intervention that makes a difference to that person, or it might not be that first intervention. So I think that's the other thing that, I mean, I really learned right at the beginning, is that it can take a lot of time, and you have to have really good boundaries around the work that you do, in what's theirs when they're ready to be motivated, and what's yours, and how much you want to help them, and all of that sort of rescuing and the difference between rescuing and helping, I think, was probably, especially at the outset, like a really huge learning curve.
The difference between rescuing and helping. Okay, I'm absorbing this. I know this is going to be a deep session. Okay. What? How many? I won't ask that question. Actually, I'll say, what have you noticed about working with social workers?
I would say, of the social workers I've worked with, they're really creative, really wide
Sorry. Let's say that.
range of tools.
Let me ask that question again because it cut out. What have you noticed about working with social workers?
So I would say that they're really creative. They have a really wide range of skills and tools that they use in their everyday work. And so when I'm working with them, it's a real joy, because they do have that creative mindset. They will come up with all different ideas. And, when you're coaching, it's about coming out of this unstuckness. And so it can be a really enjoyable process. I think all of the social workers I've worked with have had different challenges around their work
I'm going to
in
ask
terms
about
of resource.
what you seeing, yeah.
So I've worked with someone who's never, I think it's been like quite a number of years, it might even be up to 5 years, never had a full team of staff. And then it's very difficult. They try and support each other as much as they can, but it's very difficult because it's always changing, and there's never enough people. I think that's actually the majority case, that the staffing there's a lot of turnover, and so it's really hard to feel like you're fully staffed. And I think, of course, people are really empathetic, they're very caring, and there is, I think, with, and everybody is different, like regardless of where they work.
Mm.
But the majority of people I've worked with have struggled with self-care, and they have struggled with the boundary of when to stop with work, how to switch off from work. Because of that pressure, because of that resource as well, lack of resource, wanting to do your best for the people you work with, but not having the resource to do it, but then feeling very close to burnout yourself. So just trying to work out how to create something between that.
I think we're going to talk about this today.
Okay.
This is me, and I'm thinking, should we? I've got a list of questions here, and I'm thinking, should we dive in? Because I think this is the meat of it, right? Here I am. I'm a social worker.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, and I guess, can we start here? Should we just start the session here?
Go for it.
Okay, this is it. Lovely. There are a few nights that I remember that I kept waking up at night thinking about the clients I'm trying to help.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I'm tired, but I won't sleep. And they're constantly in my mind. And then, and I've worked with families and children. I worked in youth justice, and I remember times when I had levels of anxiety, thinking, how am I going to solve this problem? And the struggle to switch off is real, because when we're at work, it's all about the family or the child or the problem. And I'm coming to you and I'm asking you if you can help me. Yeah.
So I think I would probably start with asking, are there particular times when this happens?
When I struggle to switch off, I need to switch off when I get home. It's difficult. But at night, when I think, okay, I'm really tired, but I won't sleep.
So are you going to sleep and then waking up?
Yeah.
Or you can't get to sleep, or both?
It can be both. There are different times. Sometimes it can be both at the same time, or one or the other. Yeah.
And are there particular issues that keep yours, where there's specific things happening in your workload?
I would say it could be more a sense of failure.
Okay. And what does that mean?
It means if the problem isn't solved, then I'm doing a bad job.
Okay. So if somebody else said that to you, what would you say to them, a colleague?
If they said it about themselves?
Yeah.
I would say, don't be silly.
Why?
Because you're doing your best, and this is all we have. These are all the resources we have. So don't put yourself down.
Okay. Why else?
Because social work is tough. But I struggle to accept that for myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hard on myself. I noticed that you're given a lot of silent moments, which is really forcing me. So I'm just letting you go, guys. She's good. Okay. Yeah. I know better, but I've always been hard on myself. And I remember once in therapy, it was a thing where the therapist says, you don't celebrate yourself. And I don't. So no matter what I achieve, I'm like, okay, next. So when I'm with the family or helping the family, my hands are short because resources are short. There's a lot of demands, and that feeling of short hands for me means that when I go home, I feel like I can't give up the fight. I don't feel like I've accomplished, because the problem is always there.
So, what did you do with this information about celebrating yourself?
I can say I haven't been consistent in doing that. It feels wrong. You should celebrate yourself, but I shouldn't celebrate myself.
Because
Because a sense of because when you're celebrating yourself, you're climbing up a ladder.
right,
I feel like I'm climbing a ladder, and then if I get knocked down, I'm going to fall hard because I've gone too high.
okay. What does it mean to celebrate yourself?
Well, to pat myself on the back.
Mm-hmm.
So if there was someone standing behind me, which was me, let's say I was standing behind myself, and I pat myself on the back, I would say, "Don't do that. The job's not done.
Yep.
You haven't achieved the goal," which is, I don't know, it could be money or just any kind of milestone. You haven't done it yet, so don't you dare, because there's a lot more challenges to come. Don't get big-headed about it. Sorry, you asked me a question actually. So what is it to celebrate myself? Meaning to be proud of myself. But maybe I don't feel proud of myself because I don't feel like I've achieved anything, even though I have. It feels scary. It feels dangerous.
Okay.
Because the balloon might pop.
And then
So
what would happen?
what would happen?
Yeah.
I'd be unhappy.
Does not celebrating yourself make you feel happy?
It makes me feel safe.
Okay. Okay. So if the balloon popped and you were unhappy, then what would happen?
I feel like a failure.
Okay. So we've sort of gone in a circle, because that's the feeling you started with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I heard it.
What do you think about that?
I guess I've lived with a lot of failure. So failure is my narrative, but it's on the inside. It's not on the outside. So much. I feel a lot here, but I don't let it out easily. And I think I think part of me lives in apprehension.
Because I think what you said to me is that when you're unable to switch off, you feel a sense of failure. But you're worried about celebrating yourself because that might lead to a sense of failure.
Yeah.
But you're already feeling failure.
Yeah.
So some of the things that coaching works with is our internal limiting beliefs. And so exploring, asking these questions, why, what does that mean? Some of these sort of visualizations of this balloon and the ladder help to start exploring what those limiting beliefs are and how they come up for you. And the more you can dig into those, the more you can start to find a solution or a way to work around or with those beliefs to change them.
Yeah.
So we had a little explore of what an alternative narrative might be in terms of what you might say to a colleague.
Yeah.
And that's where we got into the fact that you said you don't really celebrate yourself, and this sense of incompletion. And it does really strike me that you've got this sense of things being incomplete and failing, but you're afraid of failing.
Yeah.
But if that's already happening, what's the fear? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm trying to answer that question.
So it's not something you have to answer right now. You might take your time to think about it.
Okay.
But also, I think there's something about what completion means. And you talked about the goal, like reaching the goal. So going right back to what the issue was in the first place, it's about working with clients. And so maybe it's about thinking, what is the goal when you're working with clients? And how can you maybe reframe that goal so there's less chance of it feeling like failure? And thinking about the things that you might have said to your colleagues about you're doing your best. So what does it mean to do your best within the resources that you have? Does that make sense?
Very much. I'm actually processing, what am I doing? I think on one hand, I'm hired to do a particular job, but social work calls us to do more. And so, yeah, you have to tick the boxes. But when you're with a real life family, you have to find solutions as far as possible. But I take them very seriously. Sometimes I don't see a solution, but then I take that on. And a part of my job is not to find always a solution, but to find a pathway. I know this. There need to be two of me, right? I need another one of me to start correcting me, right? I need a coach, is what I'm trying to say.
So one of the things that I would recommend, so there's like literally, it is this changing the narrative, like, because you've had this narrative in your head for a long time. It's not new.
Forever. Yeah.
There you go. And so you're not going to be able to switch it off overnight.
Right.
Yeah. Our neural pathways are set from very early on. And whenever you try to change something like that, it takes work. And so one of the things that can work is affirmations.
Okay.
Yeah. Have you ever had used affirmations before?
Interesting question. I'm reflecting on, I know about them and I have friends who engage with it, but affirmations is pulling me away from what I'm used to, which is saying, hold it down, hold it down, hold it down. You're not that great. You're not that great. But I know this, but this is what I think I need to break through into it. Give it a good chance. Because I'm Christian, and I guess a lot of prayer is affirmation. But I don't trust affirmations because I'm like, well, but the world out there has got a lot of problems. It's going to attack me, and and that's the internal fight. I mean, what you see on the outside, you won't see this because I just don't show that. But affirmations are possibly a way out.
Well, I think it doesn't work for everyone, you know, and that's how coaching works as well, is that, you know, we offer a range of tools, and some of those tools might work for you and some of those tools might not.
Right.
And in terms of affirmation, sometimes the process of making an affirmation can be quite empowering. So this is what I recommend, is that you do a bit more thinking on those thoughts that are holding you back. So a thought that might be holding you back is, I don't want to get too big-headed.
Yep.
Yeah, that's something that you said.
Yeah.
And you then might challenge that thought with another statement that's positive, it's in the present, and it's affirming. So if you were trying to think of something to challenge that statement, what might you say? I don't want to get big-headed.
I would say, I have to think about this now. I could say, don't be so hard on yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so to make that into an affirmation, rather than saying don't, you would say, you would say, I'm going to be softer to myself,
Right.
or kinder,
Right.
or kind to myself, or
Right.
soft to myself.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or I am soft to myself. I am
Right.
kind to myself.
Right.
Then now we've really got to the end bit, which is the affirmation. It's present, it's positive, and it's affirming, and it's certain. I am kind to myself. I am soft to myself.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And the process of doing that can be quite positive in terms of challenging that original thought or belief yourself. You're going through that narrative of, what could I say to help me challenge that initial statement? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm going to do this. I have to report to you now.
So
Yeah.
the way that I did mine originally, so I brought out my stack. So I've got a stack of affirmations that I did based on some of my internal limiting beliefs. You don't have to do this many. That's just how many I ended up doing. But the way that I did it was to journal first. So have you ever done journaling?
No.
So journaling is just basically writing down your thoughts. And once you've written them down, you can go back and you can see, like, these are the internal messages I'm giving myself. These are the thoughts that I'm having. I'm going to pick this thought, which I think is really holding me back, and I'm going to try and reframe that, challenge it,
Yeah.
and build that into an affirmation. So that can be a really good process. Just journaling in itself can be really helpful. So that's one of the things I worked with a few people on, is particularly in this work, is a sort of a routine of just getting your thoughts down. And you can do that about work. You can include whatever you need. And it can give you a space to process. It can also give you a space to reflect. If you want to read it back, you can. If you don't, you don't have to. So those are two different tools that I'm going to invite you to have a think about. Perfect.
Can I ask you a question? Slightly off me, but you're welcome to come back to me if you want. No problem. What have you seen are the benefits for, I say in particular, social workers, but even the frontline workers? What benefits are you seeing as you engage them in this way?
So the things that people have fed back to me have been around self-confidence, self-esteem. Organisation has been one that's popped up a few times, which was interesting.
Right.
Somebody reported that they felt less lonely because they had felt more empowered to ask for help and to set boundaries around what they were doing for everybody else. Somebody else who didn't have any issues with their work but wanted to start a new project,
right,
just said they were really surprised by how much they had in themselves to reach that goal, which they thought they had explored, and they couldn't work out why they were getting stuck. But just by having that conversation, having that space, having someone asking the questions, doing a bit of digging, they came up with their own answers. They just needed that environment, that space.
And something I want to touch on, actually, whilst you said it, what do you mean when you say people have the answers in them? So, for example, frontline workers, social workers, what relevance is it that they have answers within them? How are you going to use those answers within them to improve their output, their desires? What are you working on? What are you using that for? What does that mean? I'm asking you a lot of questions on that.
No, that's great. So because you've sort of helped me by asking me the question previous to that. Because if you're thinking about improving confidence, improving esteem, helping people to feel more organized, that's all stuff that you do in social work. You do help people with those things.
Right.
So you have those tools and skills within yourself. You know the answers. You know the range of, people know about reframing. They might not know what the word is.
Yeah.
But people know about changing your thought patterns and helping you to feel more motivated. What makes you feel more energized? You can recognize sometimes the thoughts that are unhelpful, and often when I share a tool, it's familiar. It might not be one that you've used exactly, but you understand the process, or you understand where it's taking you, and you understand people.
Right.
And that's half of the thing of coaching, is understanding people. And so I help you to reflect on that knowledge that you have already.
How do you mentioned something earlier on about organization? This is feedback you're getting from your sessions. How are people, what does it mean when people say that you've helped them to become more organized? No, let me be more clear on the question. What does it mean when you say through your coaching that frontline workers, say social workers, are becoming more organized? What does that mean?
Yeah, it's not, I guess it's about the examples. If I think about the people who have said that, it's quite a lot about boundarying their time,
Right.
and their day in terms of work, and in terms of work life. So it could be, some people have talked about sort of time slotting their days, so that they always have protected time for admin, for instance. Or it could be about fitting self-care in better, in a way that works for them. Or it could be about, one of the things that I often talk about, which is usually a reminder for people, or sometimes it is one of those things that when you hear it, it just makes sense, is the sort of top 3 priority list. So one of the things that can help with organization, but also with a sense of success, is just giving yourself 3 things to work on that day. And if you get more than 3 things done on your to-do list, that's brilliant. But if you get those 3 things done, those are the 3 things that you needed to achieve in that day.
Right.
So that helps you to prioritize. It helps you to feel more organized. It helps you to feel less like you've got all these other things going on. And so things like time blocking in your diary as well. So lots of different things for different people.
Right. Question for you. It might be the last one. I'm not sure. What has this line of work done for you?
Which line of work? The coaching or the line of work before?
Wow. Okay. No, the coaching. Yeah.
Coaching. It just feels like it fits for me, and it feels like it's given me a sense of freedom. And yeah, I mean, there's lots that this freedom has also unpacked for me. Lots that I've been able to embrace and learn. And part of that is to do with coaching, and part of that is to do with growing as a person.
Yeah.
And I see those things as quite intertwined. But I have become much more of an activist. I've become much more interested in social justice. It's given me the headspace, I think, to feel like I can really start to understand these things, rather than being embedded in the front line and feeling like I'm doing the 9 to 5. I sort of explore different things in different ways. So, and it's given me more confidence to do that as well. Where I'm not working in institutions, I'm working for myself. So an example might be that the books I'm reading at the moment are about identity. And I do have one book that's related to coaching that's on the go at the moment, but it isn't my priority book.
Yeah.
Because I want to work with people as people.
Right.
And I want to understand the different things that might be going on for people. And I talked at the beginning about how social workers might not think that they're the typical candidate for coaching, but also people from marginalised backgrounds might not think that they're a typical candidate for coaching.
Oh.
And they, you know, people can often bring in different issues that are related to that marginalised background. So yeah, it's given me a lot, a real sense of being in the right place.
This is encouraging. This is a very, oh wow, this session was a mix of something that was really intense, but also freeing.
Oh, good.
Yeah, this is very different. I appreciate it as well. It's caused me to be very heavily reflective today. I like what you just said just now. I'm glad I didn't forget. It was, you said, even people from marginalized communities, backgrounds can be a coach. So I don't need to, you're freeing us now because you're saying, look, you can do it too. Don't think you can't. Yeah. Where can we find you? I know it's at the bottom of the screen as well. But
yeah, so I'm on Instagram at Act and Solve, and I'm on LinkedIn as Rashpal Panesar Gibson with a P. One of the very limited Panesar Gibsons in the world. Yeah, so that's mostly where I am. I do have a website, which is Act and Solve Coaching. But always happy to have a chat if anybody just wants to find out more. I do also do wellbeing sessions for organisations with a coaching slant. So
no, come on, you've plugged it. You've got to plug it a little bit more. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
So sort of what we already talked about. So self-care, tackling overwhelm, work-life balance, switching off, feeling effective every day. So those kinds of tools that I was talking about today, around organisation and time management, some stuff around affirmations. All of that, depending on the topic. So those are just examples. So just working with organisations on what they really need for their staff.
Do you know what's interesting? I guess one of the big things I'm really interested in entrepreneurialism, which is a lot of what you're doing right now. So I'm kind of hooked on you at the moment. And I guess for some, like even myself, I'm running this podcast for the last 4 or 5 months now. And it's interesting because for me, I know about the equipment I need. I've got a mic, I've got a camera, I've got a laptop. I think that's all you need. Oh, I've got a light as well from IKEA, by the way. You'd be surprised at what it looks like. It's one of those what do you call it? Ring lights, those little ring lights that they sell. It's really good phone holder and that. Great piece of kit. I know what I need, I can manage that, but some people don't know where to start.
Yeah.
So like yourself, you've started this. You started, and how does, and I guess this is just probably the last thing I'm going to ask you. How does one start? And it doesn't necessarily have to be a business step. It could be a mindset step. What would you say? A couple of tips. How do we step into the world that you're in?
So I think the first thing to say from my own personal experience is prepare for it to be difficult. Because especially if you've worked in an organization before, if you've worked with peers, if you've worked in a setup that already exists, this is going to be different. You have to self-motivate. You have to learn a lot of new things. It's a different approach, and it takes time. So you have to be patient. But in terms of tips, I would say really think about what you want, and what you're committed to, what you're passionate about. It's taken me quite a while to get to where I am now and understand who I really want to support and how I want to do that. And having that conviction and understanding why you're doing it in the first place is very, 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 very important. I would say don't feel like you have to do it like everybody else. Find your own way. And just going back to sort of what I mentioned before about marginalized communities, don't feel like you have to do it the way that everybody else who doesn't look like you is doing it as well. Because particularly in the coaching sphere, there is a very common, I guess, type of person who's doing coaching. And some of those approaches work for them, but it might not work for you. And it's really important to think about that. And that could be down to class, that could be down to gender, it could be down to your ethnicity. I'm embracing much more sort of Eastern methods and ideas from non-Western approaches. But that doesn't come freely. It doesn't come. It's not common at the moment. The more common approaches are very Western based. Right. So don't feel afraid if you don't feel like it fits for you. If it doesn't work, don't feel afraid to investigate what might work for you. And the fact that you're in a system, and the common things that you're seeing are systems that work for other people.
Wow, that's mega. That's mega encouragement. I've got so much to say on this. I think I could probably encapsulate a lot of what I'm about, and that is I'm just going to be myself and not try to emulate anyone else. But actually, this platform is hopefully, and one of the characteristics of it, to attract people to feel comfortable, is that it's, in quotes, down to earth, conversation based, narrative based. I can articulate a little bit clearer or more Queen's English than this, but I choose not to, because I don't want any barriers. I want people to know this is me, and I really appreciate you being you today and expressing that. And I think it's a broader topic that we can look at when it comes to how we approach life and how that may inform your coaching style, and how social workers can be informed about how people are different.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that, so you've brought up lots of thoughts for me as well, just by saying that. Like, I feel like we could talk for probably another hour. but seeing representation of you is really, really important. Being authentic is really important, but it's very difficult.
I'm glad you said it.
It's very difficult.
Yeah.
And it it takes time, and you just like I was thinking like, what am I going to wear today? And I was really,
You mean for the show?
yeah, and I was really
Wow.
conscious of not smartening myself up out of what I would normally wear for coaching, because that is inauthentic for me.
Wow, love it.
But I could feel the pressure then to do something different, to change into something else. And so, in a way, it's an act of resistance. It might seem small, but if you're having to consciously make decisions around that, then it does feel like an act of resistance.
It's a lot. I guess we're for me, I'm shaking off a lot of the westernized, and it's more than westernized, but we're going to it more another day, but shaking it off. And the world is open to that now more so. I also wanted to say blue works for you. So when I see you, when I see you again, just keep it blue. Or if you feel to just go purple, you know what I mean? But I'm just encouraging you because blue works. But I want to talk more, and you know what? I'm going to hold. But I really want to say, I want to ask you, is there a part 2?
I'm totally up for a part 2.
Let's go. Lovely. Guys, did you feel how mellow that was? This was a real silky session. That's how it feels. I'm like, I've been like, you've kind of broken some chains off my mind. So I really appreciate that. You've heard how good she is. Acton on Instagram, Acton Love, on LinkedIn, Rash Power. Sorry,
Acton
my
Solve.
mistake. I'm gonna let you do it on Instagram.
Acton Solve on Instagram, and Rash Powell Panasar Gibson on LinkedIn.
Yeah, there you go. You could do it better than me. It actually says solve, but I saw love. I don't know what that is, but hey, it is Acting and Love as well. So appreciate that. I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Because we all have children to attend to, and I'm going to run a hot bath and see what I can do. I appreciate your time, and I will see you again, guys. Thank you for joining the Social Work Race. Please share, subscribe, download, and then share, subscribe, and download again. Please visit Rash Pal's pages. It's really good to support each other. If you're a student, you've learned a lot here. You don't need to go into practice short arms like a lot of us have. You've listened to this session today, and you can learn a lot from it in advance. For those of you who are well experienced in practice, hopefully you've learned something. Have a good night, everyone. Take care.